it. But I am so thankful I have it this week because I live in Langley and it is
Okay, great. I was just gonna ask.
42 degrees out there.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So
wow.
I'm very grateful that I've got this. I don't intend
Good.
to look out to go outside again until I have to start watering about 8:30 tonight.
Yes, me too. That's what I've done too. Thanks for unmuting, Michelle, and thank you for joining us. Can you tell us where you're coming from today? Is Michelle with us?
I don't think she's unmuted.
Yeah, she doesn't
Oh,
show
there we
that
go. There we go.
Sorry, it just took me a little while to unmute. I'm coming from French Creek area.
Oh, lovely. I love that area.
It's beautiful, hot, but beautiful.
Yes. Well, we're getting a few people coming, I think, because we have just a gab session with no guest teacher, that we'll probably have a very small group. Plus, everybody's just so miserably hot. We might not want to show up, but Barbara is with us. Thanks for joining us, Barbara. Thanks for joining Gabbing About Gardening today. She's just connecting. I think that's Barb Armstrong from Quadra Island. So I just wanted to get to know a little bit more about you. I don't have to see you if you don't want to be seen. Your voices are fabulous. Leslie and Michelle and Barbara, thank you for coming on to Gabbing About Gardening. Today, I'd like us to just share a little bit about what's going on in our gardens. Leslie, you're in Langley. It's 42 degrees. You said you're not going out to water again until 8:30. Tell us how you manage your garden in this heat, and maybe tell us a little bit about the size of your garden and what you have in it.
Well, I have lots of flower beds, and just a moment. Oh, someone's just at the door. Oh, sorry, someone's just at the door. I have flower beds. I have a vegetable patch, raised beds, and I was out watering this morning at 6:30. And I had to go out at midday because some of my pots on my patio had already dried out. And as I say, I'll be out there again at 8:30. We do have underground watering systems, but I do have beds that require more than that, like my roses, for instance. And I have some new trees that need more than just a sprinkle.
And how big is your garden, Leslie?
Well, I share a home with one of my daughters, so we actually have over an acre. But my portion is about probably a quarter of an acre. Yes. And I always joke. I always joke
to manage, isn't it?
Yes, I always joke with my friends that my son-in-law, bless him, is an Italian, and of course they like grass and a few trees and lots of pebbles. And then you come round to my part of the garden, it's like an English garden. And I always joke and say, I'm sure as soon as I've left here, there will be bulldozers in, plowing everything down, making it grass and with a few statues. But in the meantime,
it's because different cultures really do grow different kinds of gardens. So
yes.
Thank you for telling us a bit about yours. Barbara and Ellen, welcome. As you can see, it's a very small gabbing group today. We're very casual. I'm just inviting people to share a little bit about their gardens, how they're managing in this heat. Leslie has shared with us from Langley about her flower beds and vegetable beds, and she jokingly told us she shares the garden with her Italian son-in-law, who has a very different style. Leslie's style is more an English garden. Barbara, do you feel like sharing with us something about your garden today? I'd love to hear what's going on in your garden.
Sure. Can you see me, Lou, or how do I look? How do I do this? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Be lovely to see you.
See you? Okay. There, I'll just
but-
put this. Ah, there we are. Hang on, I think I found it. Okay, she says, okay. Maybe. No, I guess well, I'll figure that out once we get somebody else going. What other one do I press, Lou, here? I've got start video, which I did.
In your lower left corner of your Zoom screen, Barbara.
Yeah, it says Barbara.
Be a place that says start video.
Okay, hang on, we'll do that. Allow Zoom to access your camera. Let's see if we can get this. Sorry, guys.
No problem. You know, in the meantime, you can just tell us your story, and then you can figure it out. So tell us just a little bit about where you are, the size of garden you have, and how you're doing in this incredible heat.
Yeah, I tell you, we have, I don't know, we're on, we overlook Siddle Channel. So I'm on Fox Road. And so we're up from the beach on the cliff, and the garden has about 8 raised beds. Then I have a center section with flowers, and then I have a left one. Hold on, it's time to read. Sorry, Dolly. He's in the same room. We're downstairs trying to stay cool. He's gonna, okay. And I decided to chat on here. Okay, so I have garlic and raspberries at the back, and I have my raised beds, and I have tomatoes and brassicas, but they're not doing well because I'm finding that I'm getting that lovely little worm that you're supposed to put a potato in the ground, and they're not looking well. And then I've got flowers all around the outside on the perimeter. But the garlic, interestingly enough, it did some weird things this time. It has, with all that wet, and then I'm pretty sure I have that neck rot, that fungus that comes on them. I'm hoping to harvest some pretty. Yes, I pulled 2, and sure enough, I looked it up, and I thought, man, I've never had that, and I've been rotating my crops. And so
where did you get from last year?
No, it was from my own, because I always collect my own and plant it. So there was that. So I think I'll harvest it and see what it looks like and dig it up a little bit early, because we've got as you know, those long, their stems, and they're going yellow on all the tips, and they're not going yellow in the right spots. So there's that. And with the heat, and I have the drip system of watering, but it's just, it may not keep up, because as you know, the evaporation from the foliage of all the plants won't be able to keep up. And I've put all my hanging baskets under a cover tech just to keep them a little bit out of the sun. So, and that's about what I can tell you. I have Cosmos from seed. I've tried planting seed and plants. This year has been very different. As you said, the weather's just been crazy extremes. And we had hail here. We got hit by that hail. We had it rolling off the roof and in 2.5-foot piles when it finished after 10 to 25 minutes of hailing. Yeah, and so everything was like smashed. And and the fig. Yes, the fig is in the middle, and we trimmed it. And we, poor baby, but I was, after watching all your videos, we were said, do not put your fig in the middle of the garden. But because we had deer and we weren't fenced on the outside yet, I put it in the middle, and its root system apparently will go underneath my beds and up. Is that true?
My fig is pretty much in the middle of one of my gardens, and I have no problem at all.
I know where your fig is. That's right. Okay. I'll he's extraordinary because we really trimmed it, and with the heat, and now they're loving the heat. And you know that new foliage is coming out of the trunk of the
good.
fig. It actually
That's
can
a
push
good
through
thing.
that, through their trunk, like their, you know, their center and all their branches. I'm just amazed at what it's doing.
Now, you're Barb Armstrong, right? Barbara
Yes.
Armstrong?
Yes.
Yes. So maybe I can see your garden tomorrow if I drop one off to you.
Ah, on Wednesday or tomorrow.
Yeah,
Sure.
Wednesday. That's right. Yeah, I'd
Wednesday.
love to see it.
We can talk. We can sort it out. I don't want to take up too much time. Maybe somebody might like to talk.
Well, we have
Does anybody
lots of
have?
time.
Yeah. Okay. It's nice to hear
And I just
how
want to
people's
say that
gardens are doing.
Barbara, like me, like I am, we are both on Quadra Island. And Barbara is gardening with raised beds. Leslie also has raised beds. Michelle, do you want to share a little bit about your garden with us? And then we'll go on to gabbing more about some of the problems we've encountered this year and maybe be able to help each other.
Sure. We have a quarter acre just of a residential like area. And we've just been living on Vancouver Island for about 2.5 years. So still learning from the prairies how to garden out here. We built a new house, so put in all the landscaping and everything ourselves. My husband put drip irrigation and I helped him. So that's really been helpful. But like one of the other gals said, I don't think it's quite enough these days because it's just so hot. But we have a raised bed, a flower bed with some shrubs and trees. And then he built me 2 raised beds at the side as well. And then I have a little vegetable patch. So just learning, trying things, and yeah, having some success, but a few learning experiences as well.
Oh, thanks, Michelle. Whereabouts on Vancouver Island are you?
Just in the French Creek area.
That's right. You've
By
mentioned
Parksville.
that.
Yeah.
That's a gorgeous area. So you mentioned challenges, some successes, some not successes. What have been your biggest challenges this year? And how wonderful that you've started a completely new garden. I find that so exciting.
Well, thank you. Some of our challenges is maybe just some of the shrubs we picked. Like we had Mexican choices, those ones that are really yellow, and they didn't seem to like where we put them. So my husband raised them up and decreased the water to them, and they seem to be doing better. And then just some of the pests out here, like that are eating my radishes, or yeah, just a few bugs that I'm not sure what they are. I'm learning, I don't know if you've heard of Linda Gilkison, but
Oh yes, we've all heard of Linda. In fact, Michelle, I have her book right here.
Well, she sent out a really great, you can subscribe to her emails just about the heat. So I madly put some sheets over some of my lettuces so they don't bolt, and just some gunny sacks over my beets and stuff. And it's really helped, I think, just because it just can't handle the heat, some of these vegetables. So yeah, and I want to learn everything about garlic because I put a lot in, but I don't know when I should harvest it. I cut off the scapes. So yeah, any kind of information I'm open to, I would love.
Oh, well, thank you for telling us about your garden. Isn't it amazing that, well, first of all, Linda Gilkison and Arzina Hamir are 2 of my favorite garden teachers. I love, I love their info.
Well, you're very smart too. You're very, very intelligent.
Oh, well, thank you. We all have levels of intelligence, but
Oh, I
those
think
two
you are too.
they really know their stuff. But you know, it wasn't until Arzina and Linda started talking about putting sheets over or lattice. We put some lattice up today over some plants that were just getting so scorched. I never ever thought about using a bed sheet
Yeah,
to shade anything in my garden. And it's of course so brilliant, right?
it is. Yes, yes. She's very smart, even about starting your winter vegetables now, like all those things that I never would even dream about living in Calgary or Winnipeg. So, yeah. So lifelong learning.
Yeah, it must be really different for you. Here comes another lady, I think Helen joining us. So we'll welcome her to our gabbing circle. Hello and welcome. Leslie, are you familiar with the work of Linda Gilkison? Michelle was just mentioning this.
No, but I love the cover. That definitely has eye appeal.
Yeah, it does. And it's written by Linda Gilkison. And hello to HLE Page. I think that's Helen. I'm not sure, but just to let you know, we're just a very small, casual gabbing circle here. So we've all been sharing a little bit about the type of garden that we have. Would you like to share with us where you are and what kind of garden you have?
Oh, hello, everybody. Yeah, no, I always miss these things because I'm busy doing one thing or another. And I just came back from my second shot and I'm trying to take it easy. So perfect. I'm at the south end of Quadra here. We've spoken a few times. Hélène is my name. And I'm just reclaiming my gardens. It's been, I don't know, 12 years of working in a BC Ferries and planting every spring and having disastrous summers and not being able to harvest, so I gave up for a long time. And now that I'm retired, I'm just trying to cut back the alders and the cherries to just, and it's going pretty well. I planted pretty tight, way too many things, but I'm really happy with it because I like the variety.
Oh, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you have more time for your garden. Hélène, I've always enjoyed seeing you at the ferry and your beautiful smile and great attitude. So thank you for joining this circle of gardeners who are gabbing about their gardens. We've just shared a little bit about what our biggest challenges have been. And here comes Irene joining us in our gabbing circle as well. I love this nice little group. So feel free to stay unmuted and you can jump in. Hi, Irene. We're just a small group of enthusiastic gardeners today, and we don't have a special guest teacher. We're just sharing what is going on in our own gardens. So Irene, Hélène, and Leslie and Michelle have shared a little about their garden and where they are. Would you like to share where you are and what's going on in your garden?
Sure. I'm in Campbell River, and we have lived here for, I think this is going on our 6th summer. We moved from the prairies, and before that we lived in Ontario. So it's been an interesting learning curve, and it's mostly rock and sand. So yeah, I wish I'd joined the gardening club right at the beginning. I would have probably saved a lot of time and heartache. But anyway, getting smarter. So
We can all
there,
relate, my friend. We can all relate.
so there was two garden flower beds at the front of the house, sort of in front of the front. And it looked quite pretty, but they literally had just plunked a few plants into the rocky stuff to get the house sold, to try to make it look nice. So last summer we dug it all up. And so we dug up all the front gardens and screened it all out. So I think, things should start to hopefully thrive. And whenever I plant stuff, I try to put in good soil and organic stuff. And maybe eventually it'll be a little bit easier. Like watering, especially right now, is a challenge for everybody, I'm sure. So, but no, it's I'm making progress and just finding out about what grows here. Like, it's totally different than living in Alberta or Ontario. And the gardening club here, they're great. They have some tours, which is very helpful to see what other people are doing. And the articles that are getting shared are great. Like, I have a fig tree, and I didn't know that it was a fig tree when I moved here. And again, they had just probably planted it. So it just didn't do anything for the first probably 3 years. And then as we improved the soil in a garden next to it with seaweed, the runoff would go to that tree. And then that tree started to thrive. And then we finally got, like, I think 2 figs on it last year. And of course the deer ate it.
Yes, of course.
And so this year, it looks like it has about 8 figs on it. And now I've watched a video on, there's correct time to prune it and ways to prune it. So I'm hoping in January I can start that process, and then it'll become more productive. So yeah, anyway, it just feels like an awful lot from in the beginning, and maybe now it's starting to feel like I can catch my breath, because I'm not going to be here 20 years from now to be doing this. That's the thing, right? It's nice if you're starting out young on a property, but when you're starting out at, well, I'm 65, my husband is 75, and we came 5 years ago, and I can feel that we're starting to slow down a little bit. But we've also made a lot of progress, so.
Exactly. Oh gosh, I can just so relate to everything that you're saying. I'm 69, my husband will be 80. And last year I said to him, gardening is not an old person's game. What the heck am I doing? Because last year Barbara's laughing, right? It is not. But, I think it keeps us young. Keeping our hands in the soil, it keeps us happy, it keeps us healthy, and I think it keeps us young, because all of those microbes in the soil are the same kind of microbial friendly microbes that our own gut and skin and brain are all requiring to be the healthiest we can be. This is another book I'm reading. We've already all said we love this book by Linda Gilkison. This is the book I'm reading right now, The Hidden Half of Nature, the Microbial Roots of Life and Health. And the people who wrote this, it's a husband and wife team, are both scientists. He's a geologist and she's a biologist. And they started their first garden about 10 years ago in the Seattle area. And then she was diagnosed with cervical cancer, quite advanced. And so they were finding out all this new information about soil. Then she was diagnosed with cancer, and they started to learn all about our own microbial, it's called a biome, microbiome of our own bodies. So I'm just fascinated. Honestly, it reads like a novel, and yet they're giving such great scientific information. So when you were sharing what's going on with you, Irene, you know, I could really relate to this gardening thing is a lot of work, and I think it's good work. I really do. I mean, I think we get tired and we need to learn when to rest. But I mean, look at us. We all look so great. We look healthy. We look healthy, don't we, Barbara? We look strong. Barbara and I are from Quadra, Irene. Leslie, who is Elle Goodbrand, is a lovely British lady from, at least you have a British accent, Leslie, from Langley. Michelle is in French Creek on a quarter of an acre. And Helene is on Quadra Island as well. So that's where the 6 of us are coming from. Well, tell me what you are most interested in talking about today. Is it a challenge? Is it something frustrating? And I'll just interject along with that question that 2 days ago, we hosted a compost and soil clinic here at our place on Quadra Island. We're on 8.5 acres. Our garden is a little over 12,000 square feet. And it is 2 different styles of garden. The original garden, and Barbara has been to my garden, I don't think Helene has yet. The original garden, and there was never a garden here before, was built on a slope that came down into a swamp. And so we used what is called hugelkultur to build it up out of the swamp. And then it's basically crisscrossing smaller branches and pieces of windfall and putting in leaves and grass and wood chips and soil, alfalfa pellets, manure, and then covering it with soil and planting right on that. That was our original garden, and we put that in 2004. So that's 17 years ago this year. And then 18 months ago, we doubled the size of our garden. And the reason for that was I wanted to have more of a production garden. Our original garden had become, and still is, a beautiful food forest garden. Are you all familiar with that term, food forest garden? A little bit. It's a very popular way of gardening now where we keep trees. And because of global warming, today's a good example, trees are more and more an important part of the way we need to garden. We need that shade, and we're going to need it more and more. So the food forest garden mimics a natural garden or a natural jungle by retaining the canopy of tall trees, smaller trees, shrubs, fruit canes, strawberries. So for instance, we've left up the big trees like the maples and the conifers, around our garden zone. And we planted hazelnuts, which would be the second canopy. And then we have blueberries, raspberries, and then strawberries are our, I call them our weed of choice. Strawberries are our major ground cover. And if there's anything that this hot weather teaches us, it's how important it is to keep it covered. Keeping the ground covered means we're keeping more moisture in at all times. So just jump in here anytime, ladies. I don't mean to preach, but it just seems like a timely topic. So that's what our initial garden design is. And then 18 months ago, I've realized that as I got older, I was not feeling as confident in the food forest garden because it had become a food jungle garden. And while it's very productive, our fig tree is 20 feet by probably 20 feet. And she has 300 figs on her this year. And I have propagated more than 50 figs from that one grandmother tree. Barbara has seen that tree and she's getting a fig. She's getting a fig on Wednesday, another fig. And then we have a daughter and a granddaughter next to her. And in the new garden, that's what I call the production garden, because there are fewer trees. We've not planted any really big trees, although we did put in 2 more figs that are going to be espaliered. No more big canopy figs, because when you're 69, when you're 70 and 80 years old, climbing up a 3-legged tree or 3-legged ladder to pick 300 figs, you're just asking for it, right? The production garden has 30 beds. They're all straight beds running across they're sort of terraced beds, but they're all linear. And so I'm really happy with what is going on. It's completely changed how much I can produce. I feel a little safer. I'm not tripping over stone walls and the ground is a little more even. So that's what my garden is like. And I guess the biggest challenge for me this year has been the timing of doing things. First of all, I'm the world's worst tomato grower, and I feel so ashamed about that. Arzina makes me feel better because Arzina is so lovely, but you know, she is a market gardener. So Arzina is my hero. Linda Gilkison is my hero. Dan Jason, who saves seeds, is my hero. We have a lot of fabulous teachers here, but I've never been that interested in growing tomatoes, but yet I feel like it's sort of the badge of every good gardener, and I'm terrible with it. How are your tomatoes growing, and are you feeling confident in your tomato growing, and what tips do you have for me? And I'm going to shut up now and let you tell me what's going on with your tomatoes. Who'd like to go first?
I'll tell you a little tip, Lou, that I read somewhere, is my husband has a banana every morning with his yogurt. So I take the skin and I put it in a liter jar of water, and I let it sit overnight. And then you pour that around your tomato, like just around the roots the next morning. And I grew one like that, and then I grew another one that I didn't do that. And the difference between the two is just like Jack and the Beanstalk and little Yeah, it's unbelievable. So you might want to try it.
Thank
Is that because
you.
of the potassium?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
Thank you, Michelle. Has anyone else tried that?
I just tried that for the
Greta.
first time. First time this year I tried that, and actually it was getting more like mushy bananas, and instead of making banana bread, I'd shove them in a 4-liter jug of milk with water in it. And then I kept refilling it and kept using that. And yeah, I didn't make an experiment, but it seems to be like, for me, tomatoes, I shove them in pots on my deck. It's always, I don't know why, but I've always done it that way. I use the large 22-liter pails, so they're high off the ground. And I also have a shelf that I could sort of like, and I let them dangle, and I don't tend them a whole bunch. At the beginning, I'll tend to pinch my little, the little suckers, but yeah, hot sun, and then I fill up the bucket with water every day, and they drain out, of course, but yeah, neglect is good. I think maybe you care for them too much.
Love it. Neglect is good. Thank you, Helen. That's great. But it sounds like you not only use the banana peel, you said you're using the whole banana?
I just got really lazy. Usually I shove them in the freezer and I make banana bread later. And I heard about this trick, and I mean, banana peels go in the compost. That's too automatic for me. I can't even change that. But instead of putting them in the freezer, I shoved them in this bucket. It was just the one time, and I've refilled it 4 or 5 times. And I guess eventually I'll chuck it and throw another banana peel in there. But I'm just lazy. And I think my mother kind of taught us that a good environmentalist, she said, is lazy. Like, you have to use what you've got, and don't be all particular about everything. That's not what nature's like, right? So I really am glad that this food forest idea, and the mulching consistently, and the no dig, and and the Google culture, it's all, I love it. It's kind of, I've been doing it all along without knowing what it was called.
Beautiful. I hear what you're saying, not at all as lazy, but very innovative. And I think that kind of thinking, that innovative thinking, is what we need now more than ever, don't you?
I think it's about taking what you need and leaving the rest. Like, we don't have to control everything. We don't have to have the perfect edge and the perfect lawn and yes, they need, like, I've been just throwing like burlap sacks as a walkway kind of thing, just to keep the grasses down. And I take the leftover hay that the horses didn't need, and I rake that up, and I just shove it in there and mound it up to next to things. And I mean, my problem is it's too tight, but I don't know, maybe they like it, it's about getting what you want out of it, really, no matter what that is, right? But anyway.
Well, let me ask you a question about something you just said, Helen. You said it's too tight. You mean that your plants are planted closely together?
Yeah, like my rows particularly. Like, I'll thin my carrots, I'll thin my beets, I'll thin everything, but because it's you know what it's like. Every year it's the constant battle of trying to plant exactly enough of each thing that you're not right in the timing, like you said. I mean, that's the real game. It's not about growing the plants. The plants can grow. It's about how much and what and where, so I still have spaced out vegetables, but my rows are really tight together. And I built a raised bed for the first time this year because the slugs were driving me insane in the spring. And I put all my more tender seedlings in there, right? Like the carrots and the parsnips and the fennels and stuff like that, right? So that's been working out because I ordered copper tape on the internet, and I just staple gunned it around the outside of the. So far, so good. There might be one sucker in there I haven't found yet, but mostly, they work.
Wonderful. I do a French intensive style planting. I keep things planted very closely together. Do you girls remember when gardeners were told you only wanted this one plant and a lot of space around the plant, and it was bare soil? That information has changed so much. we're actually learning that planting it closer together, the plants retain more moisture in the soil, number one. And when this hot, sunny, burning heat comes at us, they protect each other. And this book I've told you I'm reading, they tell the story of how plant roots that we're always taught, oh, plants are taking. They're taking out of the soil, and you have to constantly feed your plants so that they'll grow. And that was how the whole fertilizer business became so popular with home gardeners. And just a little aside, agribusiness grew out of the Second World War, and fertilizer companies found a way to use all this excess nitrogen. After the war ended, they had all this extra ammonia and nitrogen that they had used for making weapons. So the chemical fertilizer companies actually grew out of the munitions industry, and then they targeted home gardeners as well. But first of all, and I'm really just recapping everything I've read in this book. It's nothing I knew until I read this book, The Hidden Half of Nature. The whole idea that plants only needed NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium came out of the chemical industry. So what happened was we went from using nature, and Helen speaks to this beautifully, using nature as our model. You know, how do forests grow? How does the understory in a forest grows? They don't have fertilizers, NPK. They have all of their own natural organic material. The leaves fall, the worms come up from the ground and aerate it. The microbes are multiplying from all of the leaf mulch, and the wood as trees fall down, all of the mycelia and the fungi are feeding the microbes in the soil. But we were sold a bill of goods when the fertilizer companies took over the way we thought about gardens, and they are really somewhat responsible for the soil health crisis that we're in now. And it is nothing short of a crisis. Our topsoil is diminished, and that's because we have been feeding it chemicals instead of feeding it food. And like our own bodies, we can't live that way, and soil cannot live that way. So the growing plants closer together, and the idea that plants had to be far apart because then you had to feed them with this chemical fertilizer, are two opposing views. And the view of closer together stems from very current research that shows that plants actually feed the soil. They're not just taking. They are also feeding, and they do that through their root system. They have polysaccharides and exudates and all kinds of wonderful phytochemicals that are communicating with each other, with the root system of other plants, and with the microbial life that is in the soil. And they feed those microbes, and the microbes make the nutrients in the soil bioavailable to the plants. So we have shifted from our ideas of soil being about chemistry to soil being about biology, about life. It's not just the chemistry of soil. It's not just the NPK. It's all of the friendly bacteria. So that's why planting plants closer together has this wonderful advantage of the plants holding each other up because their root systems become intertwined. And here's another fabulous change that's happened. Remember how you just would yank your annual plants out of the soil, your veggies? Okay, say you had a fabulous basil crop, okay? And you've been cutting your basil, probably starting now, and you're making pesto, or freezing it in ice cube trays, whatever you do. But come fall, when that basil is just not producing anymore, we've all been taught to yank it out of the soil. Well, the new teaching, the new way is you actually cut the plant stem off at the ground level and you leave the roots to decompose and to continue to feed the soil. And that's not only basil, that's lettuces. The things that it is not are tomatoes and potatoes, because those things can harbor soil-borne disease. And rather than take that risk, most people pull them out and usually compost them in a separate compost pile. But if you've never had any of those diseases like verticillium wilt, then you can just put that in your compost heap. So here's my next question for you all. How has the way that you have been gardening, how has it changed in the last few years? Helen touched upon it a little, very, very articulately about her way of seeing things, but it sounds like she's had that style for a long time. Oh, thank you, Michelle. Michelle's saying fascinating about the soil. Should we be fallowing our veggie garden every couple of years by planting some perennial rye, etc., and let it add nutrients? What a great question. Let's jump into that question. I want to hear what you all do. Do you let your veggie gardens rest every couple of years? Do you plant green manure type crops and then use those as fertilizer? I'm a no-dig gardener. I think most of you probably know that. I don't dig at all. I just layer organic material. But let's hear, what are you doing with your veggie beds? Do you sometimes give them a rest in the fall?
Years ago, we used to, when I had a very large vegetable garden when the family were growing up, we always laid a winter crop. And then my husband would rotate it in the spring. But now that I have a much smaller garden and raised beds, no, I'm afraid I don't. No, but I do what you say we have to do now, which is I leave a lot of stuff in. My lettuce, I just churn them in. And yes, the basil. And what else would I churn in? When I got tired of the kale, I do take the kale root out, but I shove the leaves in. So yes, I'm doing that, but I don't have a big enough area now to plant a cover crop, unfortunately.
Thank you, Leslie. Yes, Barbara, don't forget to unmute, love.
I think I love that part where you were asking about the challenge or what you having up. And that's the biggest change, is this no dig part and leaving many plants in. Lots of them you take out and laying stuff back down or not pulling up the roots and adding in. My biggest challenge here, of course, is I'm on an extension of the beach.
Yes.
So it's augmenting the soil, keeping the dirt there. It's very challenging that in that regard. And this garden, have we started?
I think you
Started
may have
From
frozen a bit.
scratch? It's our, okay, love.
Oh,
And,
you started your garden from scratch and you have really
Yeah.
sandy soil, Barbara?
No, we're an extension of the beach. We truly are. When we started, you could have 3 barrels of rocks to 1 barrel of soil.
Oh,
Yep. I don't know how, Ellen, how is yours down at that end, the south end? Are you up there? No, she's not there.
I'm up north, but are you talking to Helene?
Here I am.
Yeah.
is she-
Sorry, guys.
Yeah.
I was doing 2 things at once. Yeah,
Were you multitasking?
Sorry. We're on a moraine down here, so literally they're rivers of rocks.
Yeah.
That's the
Yes,
geological
exactly.
formation is the entire
It's
area.
yeah,
My bonus is I have horses, so I'm getting like 10 pounds of manure a day each.
it was a glaciers, of course. Yes.
That's right. Yeah. So
Yeah, so we try and buy from the across the street. They have chickens, and when he has manure available, we get the chicken manure and anything else. And we've been using Mark's compost tea, which I did notice the difference when I used that. But boy, some of these new techniques for gardening is very different than when I was younger and gardened with my mom. And my mom was the manager of Eaton's Garden Shop a long time ago.
Really?
And so she,
Oh, how
Yeah.
fascinating.
yeah, so
I didn't
as
know
you
you
said,
ever had a garden shop.
yeah, yes, yeah.
Was that
Downtown.
Campbell
when it was
River?
Victoria, sorry. I'm in my head, but not telling you.
Gosh.
Yes.
wow.
Oh, that is amazing. Eden's had a garden
Yes.
shop. That's
And
so
the other thing
awesome.
and the other thing I don't know about everybody there, but I'm having a tendency to be drawn to this winter gardening because my summer garden just is not, I'm not loving it. And I'm picking things that are easier to grow and that grow for me, like Ellen says, and that don't worry about it. If it doesn't work, try something else, move something around, let it decide for me.
I love that.
Uh,
I really love that. It takes a while to learn that, but
It sure does, and I'm running out of time.
aren't we all, sister?
It's like
Life is
volunteers in the garden, you know?
Say that again,
Yeah,
Helene.
yeah.
Volunteers in the garden are my favorite. Like I build my whole garden around what's there already, you know, and I don't, yeah, I mean, even thinning stuff, I'm thinking maybe I should just cut instead of pull out roots, like, right? Like you said, leave as much as possible in there and just grass clippings, plant stock, you name it, everything. It's really, unless it's going to grow. But it's been, yeah, it's really fun. I mean, potatoes, I had 0 room for anything. And I had these 2 bags of potatoes. So literally I took an area, it was an old riding ring, and I just laid a layer of old straw. And then I put the potatoes all cut up and staggered. And I started just like taking a couple of shovelfuls out of the barn every couple of days, sprinkling it on top, and they're growing and I'm sprinkling away. So we'll find out how much they're going to grow. But I had no soil, no space, no digging ability. And I thought, okay, let's go up, you know?
Wow, good for you. What I'm hearing is experimenters, women who are not afraid to experiment. And that's really what it takes. I'm also hearing that you honor the plants that choose you. We don't always honor those plants. We think, oh, wait a minute, I didn't plant you, you're out of here. But in reality, sometimes plants choose us and they definitely choose the soil. And almost always they are adding to the soil. We used to believe It's better to pull every weed out and have bare soil than to let somebody see a patch of buttercup in your yard. Well, that is baloney. And now we know it's baloney. It's better to keep the soil covered, even if it is with so-called weeds, because those weeds are aerating the soil and feeding the microorganisms in the soil. So we just have to get over that mindset and that shame. Gardeners have been shamed for far too long. Liberate the gardeners.
Well, there's a reason I don't have a camera.
So I have a neighbor, well, he lives behind me, and they have a back corner where they put all their dog poop. And Morning Glory has just taken over from there and along one fence line completely on his property. It's all Morning Glory. So, I mean, that's one weed that, I mean, I've heard that it's extremely invasive, and it seems to be. I have my patrol, my patrol, regular patrol on 3 sides where I look for this stuff. And she's just given up because her husband is away. And literally, when I tell you it's taken over, I mean, it is up 6 feet tall on an entire fence line and in this back corner. And it didn't start in their place. It started at the person beside them, and that person, she was not well, so she mulched the whole yard, and then she realized she couldn't stay there, so she moved. And so the new people that bought it at the beginning of this season dug all that mulch off, and they've tried to put a lawn in. But in the meantime, that Morning Glory, I mean, it was already in the neighbor next to us. So that's one issue that we have. And then the other thing is we have Douglas firs right across the back of our property, and our backyard is not that big. We have a large front yard. So we have put in raised beds, because I've come to understand that this Morning Glory, there's no way I could just, well, I'd have to dig up all that stuff again if I was trying to plant the way we did in Alberta. I can't do that here. It would kill me. I'm not digging any more rock. I'm done with it. I'm so done with it. But listening to what you were saying about, and of course the grass does not grow well. There's a bit of lawn between the raised beds that are off the end of our patio and then where the Douglas firs are, and they are very tightly knit. Their roots literally are interlaced, and they're holding those trees up. So when you were talking about just all that layering, I wondered if instead of the lawn, which just suffers, it can't do well there, if doing something like that is maybe an alternative. But how much work is it to do that, and how long does it take to get something productive out of that? Like maybe even just mulching pathways. I don't know. Like that's one of my struggles, is like I'm still watering that bit. I've given up watering the front lawn because it's way too big. Like, and this is the first time we've ever given up on it, but it's like, well, it just seems silly to throw away that much water. So I don't know, how long does it take to get productive soil? Like I've heard about, I have a book on lasagna gardening, and I thought about doing it. But then it's like, well, what am I going to plant there? How am I going to plant it? Like, what's going to grow? Like under the Douglas firs, there was nothing when we first moved here. So we went to that nature center in Nanaimo, very naive. We didn't know anybody here, didn't know anything. and bought some of the natural plants that grow in the forest. And so we put in, I don't even remember what some of them are called, but it's not holly.
Is it Salal or Oregon grape?
It's Oregon grape, yeah. Yeah, I planted some Oregon grapes and nodding onions, and then there's this other one that has, it had little yellow flowers. It's got red berries coming out of that now, and the leaves are sort of an orangey red. And so they are finally, these things are finally starting to thrive a bit, but it's taken, well, at least 4 years for them to get going. And then I put in a bunch of Bergenia, because I had a monster Bergenia in the front that they'd put in, and divided it all up. And so I plunked them in the back there because they needed the shade. So they had to go somewhere. But, you know, I'm just really trying to figure out what to do with that back lawn area between our patio and where I put the raised beds at the end of the patio, because there is quite a bit of shade for part of the day. So I did put raspberries into one of those beds this year. I've just put some raspberries in there and hoping that they'll get enough sun, and they're in a raised bed. So I have no idea how that's going to work. I don't know.
You're experimenting, yay! Wow, well, thank you for telling us all about that. I really admire you're working on this project, and I think it will really pay off for you. You're in Campbell River, is that right, Irene? Yeah. I'd love to meet up with you and show you my son's garden in Campbell River. He has built his whole garden without digging, using wood chips that come from a local tree company that needs a place to dump their chips, and he has an arrangement with them. And he's probably got 2 feet of wood chips. He's never brought in soil. The wood chips have decomposed. He's built on. Have you seen that garden, Barbara? Did you come with us on a tour once? No, okay. So I come to Campbell River to pick up the veggie scraps from the Healthy Way health food store pretty regularly. And one of those times, maybe we could connect and meet at my son's place. He's up on the hill off Dogwood on Munson Road. And I think it would really encourage you and set your mind at ease a little bit. But if there was one thing I do feel good about suggesting to everybody under every circumstance, it's wood chips. I think that they are, without a doubt, the most immediate soil conditioner and smotherer. You can smother what you don't want with cardboard and wood chips. It may take, 2 hummingbirds just flew in the window. It may take a couple of times. I definitely have been layering parts of my garden with cardboard and wood chips, and cardboard conditions the soil. It's not just smothering. It actually, it breaks down and conditions the soil. So what do you mind if other people give you feedback on your comments, Irene?
No, I welcome that. And I did in that first area, that was what we tackled. I laid cardboard immediately down on it, and I have put fine fir from Bremic. I've purchased the fine fir and put that on it, and it is starting to, break down. And I guess one of my other questions is, there's so many needles falling, obviously from, like, I'm talking, this is almost a solid wall of Douglas firs, right? So that will somewhat, so the plants that I put in was with the hope that they would like the acidity coming from the trees. And like I say, they are starting to come around. They're looking like they're going to survive, but it's taken a few years. So yeah, I'd love to see your son's garden, and I'd love to see yours and anybody else if they've had this kind of an issue. I don't have deciduous trees. I have these Douglas firs at the back.
I just want to say goodbye to Michelle. Thank you for that, Irene. Michelle has to run. Thanks for joining us, Michelle. Michelle, I think, is also, oh, she's in French Creek, right. Well, let's stay connected, Irene. Are you on our Gabbing About Gardening Facebook page?
So it's called Gabbing.
Gabbing About Gardening, and it's our Facebook page. Or if you want to drop your email in the chat box, that would be great. We only have 15 minutes left, and Barbara has asked a great question, and Helene has a wonderful comment. Let's go to Helene's comment first. She's saying it's so acidic under those Douglas firs, which is true. She's saying, what about blueberries, rhodos? Do you want to just unmute and give your ideas?
Sorry, who, me? Oh, I'm just thinking acidic, right? And so what likes acidic soil, right? It's like, yeah, so blueberries, rhodies, azaleas, if you want. There's probably quite a few berries, like other small berries, that'll like it acidic. Most of the rubices probably can do it. And if there's a problem with root masses getting in the way, because I used to live at a place where there was just two enormous cottonwoods, and the root masses were just, I had no horse field for like an acre because it was just root masses, right? Now I wouldn't do it on there, but maybe mounting up instead of trying to dig amongst the roots of those things. I mean, I got a friend of mine, he just took a big chunk of culvert and he just cut off a 3-foot piece and filled that and plant stuff in there. And eventually the roots will make them way into the ground because it's an open bottom, right? So, or a hugel bed to raise everything up, and then even just a square box with a bunch of 2x6s or 2x8s, right? So anything just to build up something, but to use the plants that are going to want to grow there in the first place again, right? Like that little dogwood, that little, it's just blooming right now. The ground cover dogwood, the national flower of Ontario there. What's it? Cornus, no, not Mass. Anyway, the little ground cover dogwood, for example, right? That would probably do fine in there too. Anyway, just looking at nature again and trying to understand what it wants.
I did plant, I transplanted, somebody was throwing out some rhodos. So let's see, 3 out of the 4 rhodos have survived. So yes, I did put some rhodos in under there.
3 out of 4 is not bad.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, I have blueberries in another spot where the hillside is kind of quite steep and tiered. But I just don't know. Maybe they would get enough sunshine sort of in that in between grassy area, because I just don't know how much sunshine blueberries need.
Well, I can tell you that I have some of my best tasting, best producing blueberries in the shade of my hazelnut and fig trees. And they're producing like crazy. I mean, they're not ripe yet, and they take longer to ripen than the ones in direct sun, but they are laden with berries. So it would be worth a try, but I would get as large a blueberry bush as you can find, a high, well, yeah, a high bush blueberry rather than a low bush.
The ones that I have, and again, they had been probably planted, you know, to help sell the house. So they had just been planted. So they're just producing really this year. There was a couple of berries last year, and they look like they're going to be high bush ones. But I mean, I don't know how will they love being transplanted, and I certainly would have to have it ready for them to be transplanted. So
Yeah, and I think Helene's ideas about planting them in boxes and not even trying to dig into the ground. I've seen people grow amazing blueberries that way. You just need a large enough box, and you are putting all of the very acidic soil. So soil that you top dress with a lot of wood chips. I don't use peat anymore because of the environmental degradation it causes, but wood chips are very acidifying, and berries, all sorts of berries, love them. So that's a great way. Hey, I want to get to Barbara's comment here. She wants to know who's planting. Well, you ask, Barbara. You're right there. A little bit frozen. Oh, well, this is the internet connection on Quadra Island, unfortunately. Barbara was asking how many people are going to follow the recommendation of Linda Gilkison. She calls Canada Day Carrot Day for winter gardening and planting carrots. Oh, there you are, Barbara. You're unfrozen.
Oh, so all that was, did you hear me okay? Or no, you missed it?
Start
No.
over.
Okay, start. Okay, July 1st is Carrot Day for winter carrots, and I've always wanted to grow carrots, and I can't. I'm like you and your tomatoes. I get so discouraged. They either get all the little worms in them, or they don't grow, or the seeds don't germinate. And I'd like some tips, please, on winter carrots.
Ooh. Well, I can't.
I'm going to try again.
I grow
Don't
lousy.
you
I
and me.
grow lousy. Leslie, do you grow good carrots?
No, not in the winter, no. I just grow things like kale and Swiss chard and beets and that sort of thing for the winter. No.
No, okay.
No, sorry.
I
Perhaps
did
I'll try,
last year.
Barbara. I'll try. I still
Well,
got
I did
seed.
it the first time last year, Leslie, and I'm going to do it again this year. They were actually the best carrots I've ever grown, but that's not saying much.
Well, the carrots we grow in the summer, they're just lovely. But as I say, I haven't thought of extending that, but I will. I will put them in, Barbara.
Yeah, for sure. If you've been able to grow them in the summer, you'll.
Yes. Yes. No problem
Well,
in summer at all.
Linda Gilkison, the author of this book, Backyard Bounty. She gives you all of the information you need to grow carrots through the winter.
Mhm.
No, I have both her books.
Good. So, yes, I am putting in my carrot seeds tomorrow, Barbara. Are you?
Yes, I'm going to give it another try, and I have both of Linda's books. I'll give it another go, and maybe they're not choosing me. I will have to choose somebody else. I'll have to line them up and ask them who wants to be growing in my garden.
Right on.
What else do you grow? You put in leeks and.
Nope, I have been unsuccessful. No, I've been
No?
unsuccessful with any of those. I really do struggle with, as Lou said, this composting and soil conditioning, but what I'm successful is chard and kale and dill and and potatoes and garlic and squash.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, and I try beets, and beets struggle. Woo.
What about you, Helene? Are you going to grow a winter garden this year?
Well, when I plant all the time. I'm not against the book, but I find that it all depends. And I know the carrots do like it warm to germinate. I tried numerous different methods. There was the cornstarch liquid in which you put your seeds. There was the seeding with a board. And now I'm actually back to something I learned, my God, 40 years ago. And because I made a new raised bed to protect all these seedlings, which kept getting demolished by the slugs, right? So finally I built a raised bed, although I never liked them, but now I got one. And at least the seedlings are protected. But in there is like, yeah, I just put a bunch of twigs and cuttings and stuff at the bottom, and then a layer of horse manure, and then some straw and some hay. And I think I put maybe one bag of like one of those bales in there, and then covered that with more manure and more straw. So the soil isn't pretty, and it's certainly not nice enough to plant carrots. But what you do is you take your rake and you make a nice depression and you fill that with sand. And then you seed in the sand, and then you cover with the sand. So at the very beginning, when it's really weak, it's got nothing to fight against. A little later on, you know, the soil is moist, the compost has more broken down a bit. It might give me some pretty forked out carrots for the first year, but overall you're building soil. You're always building soil, right? That's all you can do. Yeah.
Yes.
Yay.
So I will
Building
plant
soil. Start with the soil. Well, we're coming up to 5 o'clock. Thank you so much. I've had such a great time with you all. I've really enjoyed meeting you more in person and getting to hear your voices. We're going to take a break from our Zoom gatherings for all of July. And then in August, we'll have Gordon McCrae doing a summer fruit tree pruning seminar with us. So you'll see that post on the Facebook page. Please do check out the Facebook page if you're on Facebook, and it'll be a way to keep in touch. Otherwise, just fire me off an email if you'd like to stay connected, and I'll put you on our email list to make sure you're there. And thank you so much. I'll be in touch with you, Irene, so we can connect up. And I'll see you, Barbara, on Wednesday when I bring you your fig tree. Helene? And
Thanks,
Leslie?
Lou.
Thank you.
Thank you. Nice meeting everybody. That was lovely.
Yes, that was
Thank
nice.
you so much.
Thank
Nice
you.
to meet you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Elaine.
Bye.
Bye
That was
bye.
great, Gabbing. See you soon. I'll connect with you by email, Irene. Bye, Barbara. Bye, Helene.
Bye, love. Thank you.